Now, Google Ads just don't work for restaurants, and in this video, I'm going to break down the mathematics to why they won't actually work. I will, however, leave you with some tips and tricks that if you still go ahead and use Google Ads, it will give you a much better chance of success. But as a disclaimer, right out the gate, there's a high probability that Google Ads just won't work, especially if you are a bar or restaurant. Myself, I run several businesses, and we've done Google Ads for many years, and 6 months ago, we stopped completely on all our hospitality businesses. And the funny thing is, we've started to get even more traction since stopping because we've focused that cost we saved on something much better. At its exact peak, one of my businesses was spending more than $10,000 every single month on Google Ads. We outsourced the full process to a very highly recommended Google Ads manager we found on Fiverr. In fact, at the time, he was the highest rated person on the whole platform. And every week we had a meeting to review and tweak the ads as we see fit. Our customers were increasing as time continued, and it all made sense that it was because we were in tandem increasing our Google ad spend until something happened. And it was an absolute disaster that dug us into a huge hole and left us with a bill of over $30,000 in lost revenue. Now, this video isn't to bash Google or Google Ads or even the gentleman we hired on Fiverr. It's just to state my experience as a business owner and reveal the shocking mathematics I found behind my Google Ads struggle. Now, before we get into the numbers, I want to give you a bit of a backstory to exactly what happened to me, because you're probably going to face this in the future too. I don't have time for Google Ads. I've got a business to run. It would make more sense that I hire an expert who understands this field. I want more customers, but don't have time to focus on getting more customers. I want to make sure my customers have the best possible experience, and that's where I should focus my time. Now, all of these sayings probably sound familiar with you because they're sayings I literally said myself in my head on a daily basis. I've hired around about 10 different Google Ads managers throughout the whole period I was doing Google Ads. We've tried different strategies and even had several managers at one time running Google Ads on the same business in a competition format to see which one would get the gig full time. Eventually, I just went all out and I hired the best possible manager I could find, the highest rated person on Fiverr. And as you can imagine, that in itself was definitely not cheap on a monthly retainer. And after over a year working with this gentleman, it was all going swimmingly well. Yes, we were spending over 10K a month on ads, but we were also getting huge amounts of customers through the door. Our campaigns were seemingly running amazingly, and every time we seemed to meet, I was increasing my spending. I was even giving him a cut of commission as we continued to grow. And again, no shade at this guy. He did his best. But then May 2023 came, and it all fell apart. Now, this business was located in Budapest, and even though we were still spending over $10,000 a month on Google Ads, our customers dropped by 50% in May 2023. The city was still full of tourists, and my friends who own bars and restaurants, I was asking them, are you having the same problem? And some of them were, but many of them weren't. How was this possible that we lost around about 50% of our customers from May the year before? Well, something called click fraud happened, and I hope it never happens to you because it is literally heartbreaking. What click fraud is where a competitor basically hires a bot or some cheap labor to continue clicking your ads as soon as they go live. And this destroys your budget very, very fast in the day, meaning your competitor, who's probably hired the bot, can then use their ads in peak hours, capitalizing on cheaper ads in general because your budget for the day is already spent. Now, I can tell you from one of the businesses, because it's so sector specific, there was nobody, and I mean nobody, spending as much on Google Ads as we were. But we didn't know what was going on. I'm not an ad expert. I hired this guy. So how do we investigate? Well, we started looking deeper over the next 2 months, which means by this point, I've now spent over $30,000 and my customer basis is on massive decline. We then established it was click fraud. So we went onto a company called ClickSeize, which basically analyzes all your data and confirms or not if you've got competition or click fraud itself. Of course, this was not cheap and it cost us over $1,000. But the website did indeed confirm very quickly we've got click fraud, and it absolutely shatters your heart. You can even see in some cases recordings on the phone or the website where this bot or person has clicked your ad, loaded it up, and then just stayed on the screen for some case hours doing absolutely nothing, costing you a couple of bucks. Now you can go in and hide the IP address of that business, and it does give you some options to limit this exposure, but there's only a limit to how many IP addresses on Google you can actually ban. So in my opinion, it's not really worth it over the long run as soon as you've come to that conclusion. So if you have got click fraud, buy ClickSeize for only a month or two rather than the annual plan like I did, establish it, and then just cut Google ads until you refigure out what you're going to do. But continuing on with my story and what happened next to the business, we submitted the report to Google. ClickSeize say that if you send the report to Google, Google agree, and then they'll refund you the lost money, in this case over $30,000. And it was super simple for us to prove because for one of the businesses, we were targeting men under the age of 40. And full disclosure, it's not a strip club, so you can relax. But what we found from the reports is the actual clicks were coming from women over the age of 50, which was a clear breach, and we actually excluded them from our Google ads. Google agreed, but they never refunded a penny. So we basically just paid Google over 30 grand for absolutely nothing. Like 95% of our ads were click fraud. Now, this video isn't about click fraud, and it's not to bash and say that you're definitely going to get click fraud, because I hope it doesn't happen. And in many cases, it doesn't. What I'm showing there is that's the trigger that started me going down the rabbit hole, starting AWOL, and giving you back the reality as a business owner on how you can better your business and get more customers. But luckily enough, the business survived and continued to thrive pretty much as soon as we stopped our Google ads, mainly because we now had more capital coming in every single month. Now, coming back, if you are a restaurant, which is going to be the main focus for this video, there's an even simpler way why Google ads won't work for you, excluding the whole click fraud possibility, because you just need a calculator. The first thing you need to do as a business is understand what your net profit margin is. Now, there's a few easy ways to do this. The easiest way would be contact your accountant and ask them how much net profit you made last year and find out what that percentage is over your total revenue, and it will give you that percentage. Now, to save you some time, I went and researched this for you and found the average and optimistic versions of net income for different sectors and different restaurants. So if you have no clue what your net income is, you can still roughly run a calculation on these numbers. Now, if you are a full service restaurant, the average profit margin in the United States is between 3 and 5% net margin. For fast food and casual restaurants, you're looking at about 6 and 9% net margin. Pubs and bars, you're looking at about 10 and 15% net margin. And a cafe or a coffee shop, you're looking at about 6 to 8% net profit margin. Now, net profit is after all your bills, your taxes, your staff, the costs of product, electricity, you name it. That is your total profit margin, which is probably the most vital part you need to look at in your business. Now, these percentages of margins, there are exceptions to these businesses. For example, if you are a well-established steakhouse, you've been there for 20 years, you own your building, don't have any rent or bills to pay like that, then your net profit margin may be something like 10 to 15%. But this is extremely high, and more importantly, extremely rare. So for the purposes of the rest of the video, in our calculation example, we're just going to assume the higher end of the national averages in the United States for an average full service restaurant. But it is worth remembering that the lower your profit margin is, the harder it is going to be for you to find success on Google ads, which is a huge tip. It might be better for you not to spend money on advertising and instead focusing that money on ways to increase your overall net margin. Now, for our example calculation, we're going to use the full service restaurant example, and we're going to look at the national average in the United States of 3 to 5% net profit margin. But I want to give you some hope, because I'm going to double that and say you own the building as well, and your net profit margin is actually 10 10%, which again is extremely rare, but there's going to be some doubters to the mathematics, so let's hammer that point home. Now, according to WordStream, which is a company that gathers data on Google Ads, the cost per click for a restaurant and food sector in general is around about $2.18. Now, this figure is basically where a customer sees your ad, or a potential customer, should I say, and then simply just clicks it. This customer is not at your restaurant, it's not a conversion, and it's definitely not somebody who's paying you money. It's just somebody who searched steakhouse, seen steakhouse, click steakhouse. They haven't spent a penny. Now, what we need to do next is take this number and use it to figure out what our cost per conversion is. Now, according to Local IQ, for restaurants, a mid-range conversion rate is about 5%. And what this means is for every 100 people that have clicked that ad and cost you $2.18 a time, 5 people will convert into a paying customer. So that means, with simple mathematics, with the average cost of $2.18 times 100 clicks divided by 5, long story short, equals $43.60 to acquire a paying customer on Google Ads on average for a restaurant. Now, this figure of $43.60 is something called a CAC, a CAC, or you might have heard the term customer acquisition cost, which is a vital number. If you want to actually grow your business, you need to learn what your CAC is on every platform you advertise on. It's basically how much it costs for a customer to come through the door. And $43 is still a substantial amount of money. And for a burger joint, that in itself might deter you from acquiring a customer because your average spend per customer may be much lower than $43. But in defense of this figure, it might be 2 people coming through the door instead of 1, so that bill would be higher. It could even be a party of 10 people coming through the door for that $43 to eat as many nachos as they can. But this figure, $43.60, does not paint the whole picture. In fact, a lot of people online I found on Fiverr will tell you this figure, and they won't paint the next step of the picture. They'll just say it costs $40 to acquire a customer. Happy days, an average customer spends $100, you've made money. But it isn't the whole picture, because you need to go one step further using the number from earlier. Our net profit margin in our example is going to be 10%. And we know that our cost to acquire a customer is $43.60 from Google Ads, which means if we put these together, we can figure out how much a customer acquired from Google needs to spend on their bill for you to break even on that transaction. So if we use our insane 10% net margin for our well-established restaurant and we put it into our CAC of $43.60, the calculation is as follows. $43.60 divided by 0.1, and that 0.1 is the 10% profit margin. It brings us to a calculation of $436, which is what that customer, that party, that couple need to spend for you to break even as a restaurant on that Google advertisement. Now, the reality is, majority of people who are restaurant owners do not have a net margin annually of 10%. Like I said, the high end of the average is 5%, which basically means to acquire a customer on Google and for them to break even, that customer is going to need to spend $872 on their visits in total. And the reason I say visits in total is there's probably someone down in the comments, if this video does get views, saying, what if they come back many times? Which is a very good point. Because if you are going to do Google Ads or advertising in general, this is somebody you should be targeting. Somebody who lives local, who's going to come multiple times. But word of warning, Gary Vee on a podcast recently with a bar rescue expert said that the average satisfied customer comes back about 40% of the time. And for a third visit, that's 42% of the 40%. Meaning that for every 100 satisfied customers you have, only around about 16.8 of them are actually going to come back for 3 visits. That's not more than 3, that's just 3. Which brings me on to my whole point. Do not spend this money on Google Ads if you're a restaurant, because it's extremely expensive, extremely risky, and you could use this money to better build your brand awareness, run some offers or deals, and get customers to come back. Actually, this podcast I'm mentioning, if somebody reminds me in the comments, I'll link it down below. They had a red napkin deal, which was absolutely revolutionary to me, myself, as a business owner. Now, we all have faith in our businesses, and we all think we have the best product in our area. Our businesses really really are our passions, and we can't stop talking about them, and we want them to be successful. But Google is happy to take your money and give you a very slim chance as a restaurant with net margin and everything else considered to actually break even. You would be better off taking your Google ad budget and putting it on social media, which is absolutely free to post, building your overall brand and overall service so that you get that repeat customer for absolutely free. The reason my businesses continue to increase after stopping Google ads is because we continue to get 5-star reviews every single day. And that is because I paid my staff more money and I give them more training and more tools to make that happen. Another little tip, which could be a simple hack, is to go in your area, search for hashtags that are in that area, and find a few local micro influencers on, say, Instagram that are shopping and near your area. Let them come and eat at your restaurant twice a month for absolutely free, on the condition they tag themselves when they're there. That will reach a much more targeted audience in your area and get customers through the door at a lot cheaper rate. And more importantly, these customers are going to then come back in the chance that they meet the influencer that influenced them to come there in the first place. Your money would be much better focused on building out return customers and building out your brand so that you survive. The restaurant business is ruthless and it's super hard. So why give your money to Google knowing the numbers we've just talked about? Because you're basically throwing a Hail Mary pass into the internet. Now, one thing I do have to address is the experts on LinkedIn, Fiverr, Facebook, Twitter, whatever it is. These advert experts are going to completely disagree because they want your money. And it's not to say they don't know what they're doing. They just don't see the whole picture of your net income. I literally hired the highest rated person on Fiverr, and he was brilliant. And he fully understood when we stopped working together, and we're still in regular contact. But the ads just simply didn't make sense when I got click fraud and ran the numbers in general. Because I said that phrase like I said at the beginning. I don't have time to run with this, so let's hire somebody because my time is precious. So I hope you found this video extremely helpful and subscribe. Our own app is coming soon, which will help you acquire a customer for between $2 and $5 maximum, rather than that $40+ from Google. We're going to be doing street interviews with customers so you can help improve your service overall. We've got a podcast coming where we're going to have restaurant owners on, sharing their tips and techniques in the future, all in the hopes that you can improve your business and get customer and brand loyalty. Thanks for watching and welcome to AWOL.